It's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you my friend and brother, Jeff Brooks, who is going to introduce our next speaker. Jeff?
All right, thank you very much. I think we just heard what I was going to say, so we can all go home. But at any rate, it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Klobuchar, and I would like to mention a couple of names here first, because this is the first time that we brought in other unions, and it's important that this is happening because this is a multi-employer pension plan problem. The composite bill is going to affect everybody, and we have got people here from Bill Moore, who is the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO Retirees Council. He is here, and a couple of, let's see, I think we lost Billy Casper. He was unable to make it here, but these guys we are starting to pull this thing together, and that has been becoming an important part of this operation. We have got more than just Teamsters working on this thing from here on in. I think it's also important to remember who, if you take a look at our delegation here in Minnesota, everybody is on board, everybody has signed the COPA bill. All of them are Democrats by some, I don't know, some strange coincidence. And we should be very thankful for the fact that we have this much activity and this much commitment here in the state of Minnesota. And so with that, I will introduce Senator Amy Klobuchar. Thank you.
Everybody. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you. Wow. It is great to be here. Thank you so much, Jeff, and all these people turned out on a Saturday. I think we know how important this truly is. It's good to follow my friend Rick Nolan, who always tells it like it is, right? Could we congratulate Rick on that incredible victory that he had against big money? He did that. Now, did that guy, was he going to do a recount and then he changed his mind? Well, anyway, Rick is our congressman, and he will be our congressman, and it's great to work with him. And then we have, of course, my good friend Al Franken, who's been such a leader on these issues. Thank you, Al. And it's great to be here with Bill Moore. Sherman, I wish that we had a great tour of the Capitol that I personally gave Sherman, but I wish it was under better circumstances, and not because you guys are getting ripped off right now with some of these proposals out there. What do I think? I think that promises that have been made should be kept, right? That is the bottom line. And the promise made to all of you and to the workers in the multi-employer pension plans across the country is that the pension you've earned through your decades of hard work will be there when you retire. When you signed up to work, that's what you're told. You work your whole life, then you should get that pension. That's what this is about. As Rick mentioned, over 10 million Americans participate in a multi-employer pension plan and rely on these benefits for a safe and secure retirement. And as you know, in 2014, this Multi-Employer Pension Relief Act was proposed as part of a larger big bill, and it came over actually from the House. And Al and I, over in the Senate, literally, there had been no discussions about it. It was put in this big budget bill. We heard about it and had literally a few days to look at it. I remember at that time, and I kept going, how does this affect Minnesota? How does it affect the people in our state? And we couldn't get those numbers, and we knew it affected them because your leaders were there telling us it was a bad deal. Union leaders were telling us it was a bad deal. And at some point, I remember one of our our colleagues who was trying to get me to vote for that bill said, oh, come on, you know, it's a good bill. There's some good things in it that you like. And you know that thing, that's a Central States pension plan. And this person was from a state on one of the coasts, okay? I go, I am in the Central States. And I may not have all the numbers, but it sounds like a bad deal if it was negotiated from someone from California and a Republican, and it's called the Central States Pension Plan, and no one from California was actually affected by it. That's what happened. And so literally, you have to go with your gut and go with what the people tell you, and that this was a bad thing. And so both Al and I voted against that bill, all right? So Then we had the plan was proposed, and I think a lot of people who are involved, and Sherman, you know this, thought this thing is probably going to sail through again. But we didn't let that happen, and you didn't let that happen. And we had the people come out to Minnesota, and as Rick mentioned, someone listened. People actually listened. They looked at the numbers, unlike what Congress had done with the original plan, and they realized how it ripped people off. People losing, 50% of their funds, losing literally most of their retirement. And as Rick said, you can't really go in a retraining program, at age 70 to learn how to do some high-tech robotics equipment. That's probably not going to happen, okay? And we got to be sensible about that. The pensions that are earned should be, and promises that are made should be kept. So we went back, and you had such incredible showings. And in fact, I heard directly from Treasury about our event in Minnesota. We were out voting, but I sent my staff out here for it, and it was incredible. We had one of the biggest meetings ever. He listened, he answered questions, and it was just one of those things that every so often government works, and it worked, and that plan was rejected because of all of you. That happened. Okay, so now, we are working this legislatively. We are working with our colleagues who have similar problems with other plans in their states. Also, the possibility that we could get a plan that worked better, and we're taking all of that on. And I know today that you're going to be talking about Congress creating a new type of pension plan called a composite plan. And this new proposal is not one that's designed to address the problems of central states, and it could be used only by pension plans that aren't facing the kind of problems that central states is facing. But we do have concerns that this proposal could weaken pension plans that may have some funding issues but are in better shape. So I'm glad you're going to have a discussion about this. Instead of earning a guaranteed pension benefit, this new composite plan, the benefits would vary with the market. It would not be protected by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, which means there'd be no minimum guaranteed benefit. And if the overall funding for the plan fell below the minimum requirements, the workers may face contribution increases or benefit cuts. So I believe that this thing is not going to be solved by some last-minute thing put in a bill that we don't even have a chance to negotiate, a chance to make better, a chance to improve for all of you. And we're not going to let that happen. Not this time, not next year, not the year after. So I want to end here with a personal story about why I care so much about this. A lot of you know that my grandpa worked up north in the mines, 1,500 feet underground. But what some of you may not know is that he was one of 9 brothers and sisters. And when he was in 6th grade, he was doing really well in school. And then the family was running out of money. His dad and mom were both kind of sick. They weren't that healthy. And he had to quit school, and he went to pull a wagon, and he became a Teamster, okay? This is a little part of the story that I don't even think Rick Nolan knows. And I found it when I look back at all the records, you can get. And so he was a Teamster. So he did that for a few years when he was only like 13, 14, 15 years old, right? Then, when he's old enough, when he's still a teenager, he goes and works in the underground mine, the Zenith mine in Ely. And that's what he did his whole life. His parents both died when he was, I think, 19 or 20 years old. He was the oldest son. So it was his job to make sure that there was food on the table for those 8 brothers and sisters. The youngest one, Hannah, was 8, and he ended up bringing her to an orphanage in Duluth because they just couldn't take care of her. But he promised her he would come back. And a year and a half later, he met my grandma, Mary. They got married, and they went and they got Uncle Joe's blue Chevy, and they went to Duluth, and they brought Hannah back. And because he had that mining salary, and because things were starting to get a little better then, his dad, you think his dad had some pension that could help? No. His dad didn't have that kind of money, and that's why he had to drop out of school. But when my grandpa started working, unions started organizing. They started getting benefits, they started getting health care, the conditions started to get better and better. And even though every day he would go down in that mine, in that miner's cage with that black lunch box, the lunch pail that my grandma would pack for him every single day, and he'd always think about that life that he wanted in the Navy. That's what he wanted to do. I'm sure he thought about the hunting and fishing that he sometimes got to do on the weekends, but he did that for his family. and a promise was made to him. And that promise, while the mine eventually closed down and he became a logger, that promise was pretty much kept. They had some benefits, right? So that he was able to save some money in a coffee can in a basement, send my dad to Ely Junior College. My dad, as you know, then goes on, U of M, gets a journalism degree, ends up writing for the newspaper and gets to interview everyone from Ginger Rogers to Mike Ditka to Ronald Reagan. But my dad did all that. And he did all that because promises were made and promises were kept. And I stand before you as the granddaughter of that iron ore miner and teacher, and the daughter of a newspaper man and a teacher, and the first woman elected to the United States Senate from the state of Minnesota, right? And that was that's because promises that were made were kept. And I want the same for your kids and your grandkids. And that's why this is so important for me, way beyond what this is about. Someone from elected official who's no longer with us, but someone from Texas, it's not Ted Cruz, once said, and her name was Barbara Jordan, she was a congresswoman, and she once said, what the American people want is simple. They want a country that's as good as its promise. And that's the America that we want. So let's get to work and get this done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.